welcome to Cherish TV. I'm Stacy, your host, and we've got a great panel today. We're actually going to be talking on what seems to be a very heated topic. 65% of women are talking about vaccinations. And so we're going to get into it today on, what is the theory, what is the research showing us today about vaccinations? Is it appropriate to vaccinate children, adults? We're gonna have some feisty conversations, so get ready. Here we go. So I'd like to kick it off with Dr. Matt.
Oh, thanks a lot. The lone man on the panel gets to kick off, and the one without the opinion. Oh well. No, really what I want to talk about is not just anti-vax versus vaccination. I just want to start spurring questions so we can learn to ask better questions. And I'll tell it.
That sounds nice, but give us your real thoughts.
Oh, I will, don't worry. No, it is a heated conversation because here's why. So many people have already vaccinated. And so if they start hearing something that might challenge their belief and what they've already done, it elicits sometimes guilt, sometimes I never knew, oh my gosh. And so it's a very sensitive matter because so many people, it's just the standard of what is. And as more science comes out, as more research comes out, they're finding new truths, like in anything. And as that information comes out, there is a component we have to be sensitive to, oh my gosh, like I was vaccinated. I was vaccinated in 1974. Both my kids, I have a 3-year-old, I have a 5-year-old, I have a little one on the way. And we have chosen not to vaccinate it. And so I don't shame people, I don't manipulate things. I just want to give good education on this topic so parents can make better decisions.
So what are some of these truths you're talking about?
Oh,
yes,
wow.
tell us, Matt. Tell us these truths.
Great. Yeah, truth trumps fact every time, and facts keep changing, especially in the vaccine world. I'll give you a basic thing. The liver is the detoxifier of our body. We all have one. Most people don't know when the liver is developed in the body. Does anybody know? So at age 2 or 3, the liver is fully developed. I was even under the assumption, due to 10 years ago science, that it was developed after the first 6 months. The truth is, when a baby's born, it's given the Hep B shot. But the liver's not even fully developed until 2 to 3 years. They know 100% development at 3 years. They know 80% at 2 years. Yet the first thing we do when we have a child that's born is inject them with a Hep B shot and a vitamin K shot, which sounds good in theory unless you know who gets Hep B. It's usually drug lords and prostitutes. And I know my newborn that was just born is not going to be either of those two. So I said, well, if I am going to vaccinate, I'm going to at least wait until the liver's fully functioning. The second question is, most people don't know, what is the blood-brain barrier? It is actually a barrier in our brain that protects our central nervous system from toxicities like heavy metals, stuff like that. And so anything with any sort of preservative can cross the blood-brain barrier. So then you have to ask yourself, well, I wonder what I'm injecting into my kid. Could it cross that blood-brain barrier, which affects all neural development? And now studies in this article right here say, they used to think it was year 3. They now know it's actually year 5, 6, and 7 to fully form the blood barrier, which protects our brain. So those are some of the things that most people don't know. We just come out saying, oh, my doctor said this, I'm going to take it as gospel, so I'm going to do this. And many are living with the consequence today of just trusting someone else for their child's health.
Well, let's talk about the consequence. So goes out saying, obviously, Dr. Matt is a doctor. I'm just a mum of also a 3- and 5-year-old that's trying to make informed, educated decisions for my kid. I also have the thing of being a special needs teacher. So one of the big things that's out there about vaccinations is if I vaccinate my kid, I'm putting my kid at risk of having autism. And that to me is always, and this is, I think we both agree on this issue, there seems to be such contention around who's getting information. My information might be different from your information, but really our outcome is the same. So one thing you said that I thought was really interesting, you said, to quote it, truth trumps fact. But I would also say, like, evidence trumps any research done. The evidence is we've been vaccinating kids, like you say, for a long time, and we have this big, like, opinion that it's causing autism. There's been no study that I've found, I know you had a different thought on this, that has seen any relationship between, like, autism and vaccination. When it's been over 10 people, where it's been, like, a study that hasn't been claimed to be fraud later on, where people haven't, like, actually had their medical license taken away from them for kind of fudging the numbers. Like, there's been no connection. Yet there's this whole movement out there, particularly particularly in Southern California where we live, where if I vaccinate my kid, I'm basically giving them autism. And can I say, as your friends, I know you don't mean to, but I've felt as a parent that's decided to vaccine, there has been a little bit of like, hey, what are you doing to your kid? You're putting them at risk. Like my love of my kid is different because I'm vaccinating them means I don't love them as much. I feel I'm equally as educated, just our education is different.
I think, too, the biggest thing on both of these, and I actually did choose to vaccinate our daughter. And
Team
she's-
vaccination!
and she's 1.5, but my biggest thing is I just don't like the stigma either way, like pro or not, the mom shaming. Like there's enough that goes on as a new mom. Like I'm telling you, even talking about it gets me like a little emotional because I'm taking care of this human and I'm trying to do the best that I can. And of course I have the Holy Spirit where I feel like, you know what, God, do I feel peace on doing this? Because I drive my life by what do I feel the peace of God.
Right.
And for me, we personally felt to do it. But as long as there's not the mom shaming, like I was joking how sometimes I'll take my kids somewhere. I'm like, oh gosh, Dallas, you have your Band-Aid on from your shot. I gotta make sure I take it off because I don't want that conversation and that heat to come on me where I feel shameful.
It is not a good thing when a mom feels that. And I think for me personally, if I'm talking to a mom who's vaccinated, my instant reaction is to disarm any sort of like feelings that might come up because of that.
Yeah.
Because just so long as you're making an educated decision and you have peace about it, I think for both of us, what happens is so many people don't make an educated decision. And that's
Absolutely.
what bothers
True.
me is when a mom just listens to a doctor because they're a doctor.
Right.
And doesn't do their own research and takes responsibility for it as the parent of the child. And so
Right.
if I know that you have done your research and you feel comfortable and you're at peace about it, awesome. Like, no shame.
Yeah. I think my other question is, and this might just kind of be loose, but is I feel like the people who have had issues, of course, with all right, and I say this gently, is you hear about that so much more, where I'm not on Facebook posting, Dallas just got her 16-month shot, she's happy as can be, never had a fever, da-da-da, but then you hear the people who, like kids had a fever and all these things that are completely frustrating and fearful, but I feel like it's an interesting with the media outlet where all you hear is, my kid got a shot,
It's fear mongering.
Right.
But I would say it's fear if you do and it's fear if you don't.
Absolutely.
This to me is the biggest question here is that my decision to vaccinate my kid is actually good for everyone. Your decision to not vaccinate your kid actually affects my kid because as you know, there's only certain vaccinations that you can have at certain ages. So if you decided not to vaccinate your kid, and I even know one of your kids did get measles, which is a good thing for her immunity. Like if you get measles, that's like a natural vaccination on its own, so that's great. But there's other kids that could not be vaccinated, maybe due to age or maybe due to health issues, that all of a sudden are exposed to a disease that was so preventable. Like we just got to look at the stats. Our countries around the world had polio, they had all these things that were killing people, and because of vaccination, we
Right.
don't have these mass deaths anymore. So to go back to a whole way of thinking where I get to decide for my kid, your decision isn't just affecting your kid, it's affecting my kid. So should you have the
Wow.
right to make that decision?
Bam.
Woo.
Look at that, bring the heat.
Let me just
Listen, there's a couple things just with it, because that uncorks a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
The truth is, that I always tell parents, you go really look into the polio thing, you're gonna have your mind blown, because it's not what you think it is. There's a whole, that's another can of worms.
Right.
And people, they rest their laurels on polio saved the day. It actually didn't, but you can look it up, Google it, find it. There's a lot of research on the truth of what was causing polio. The polio virus has been around since the times of the Egyptians. And so it's just a viral thing. Paralytic polio is actually a new thing, and it started in the States. And it was an epidemic, and it was, I mean, a huge thing to many people that were affected. But the last case of polio in the United States was 1978. There's still 10,000 cases a year, all vaccine induced, yet people don't know that. The last natural case of polio was 1978. So every other case since then has been vaccine induced. The one thing I'll say is, especially having kids, there's a difference between this, there's no research ever on the schedule of vaccines. It is when the mom's gonna bring the baby back for the post-check, that's why they start the schedule. There's never been science. They get, every time they go to do a study, Emory University's been shut down 3 times, they've lost grants. Anytime there's been a study to go look at unvaccinated versus vaccinated, all the money gets pulled. All the government
So
starts defunding
you're
it.
citing like a big pharma conspiracy. I know that's quite popular with the anti-vacciners
Let's talk about the
out there.
HPV. Thank you
Let's
for
talk
walking
about
right
it.
there. I like it. Little setup, volleyball, spike it. HPV. It's going to happen. It used to be just women and the teenage girls at 13. A law got passed in the United States of America that took over, I think, $100 million is what it cost to get all this legislation passed. it was amazing because Merck wrote the bill, Merck funded the bill, and Merck owns Gardasil, which is, you look at how many devastating things are happening, side effects of Gardasil, yet how can a pharmaceutical that pays for it, writes the bill, and owns the script and the copyright for that, and they've made $360 billion since the invention of
Okay,
that.
so I looked into this, and I'm not saying that's not right.
HPV,
which
you
is
looked into
yeah,
that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is why we need to be educated and ask the questions. I think when we ask questions, it keeps corporations accountable, because if we're all
Totally.
asking questions, it's harder for them to sweep things under the rug.
Right.
I would say this though, looking at all big pharma companies, not even in the top 20 of their earners, including HPV, it's not even in their top 20. So people often say, well, big pharma is selling a schedule really to make money, but that's not what actually my research is saying. It's like it's not even in their top 20. They've got other what they call blockbuster drugs, which are bringing in all their money.
Wow.
But people don't claim that they're selling those drugs because they're trying to keep people sick to make money.
I know we need to wrap, but I want to leave it on this.
Okay.
You look, because I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
360 billion is still a lot of money to a lot of people.
That is true.
And
I
you know,
would
that's-
take
that's called the
360 billion.
profit. But last thing I want to say is just look at the vaccine inserts. Know what the real things are. Go to the CDC and look up every vaccine. You can
Agreed.
be a parent.
Absolutely.
They have to report
Agreed.
reverse reactions. You can go put in the lot number of the vaccine. If there's ever been an adverse reaction reported, you do not inject them with that. Say, I want something else. And the last thing is, if it wasn't true, our government, our tax dollars, pays our families that have been damaged by vaccines. And so far, they've paid out $120 million to families that have been confirmed vaccine damaged. And that's only 1% of the reality are getting paid out.
All right.
I know we've got to wrap up. One thing on this, though,
Come
because
on,
I knew
bring
you were
it.
saying this, is so car seat manufacturers, so car seats are meant to be safe, equally pay the same amount of money to pay injuries towards kids that get impacted by car seats in the car. So same thing. I think anything that you create, safe or not, does have the chance of injury. So it's a risk either way. So I'm just
So
saying.
as you've seen here, we have
your homework.
only given the appetizer to the entree. It's time to do our research.
Yeah.
So I would say,
Absolutely.
let's remember, we're not shaming one another. We're having conversations to get the best results for our families, for our children. So I would say this, do your research, begin to learn on this topic, and I'm sure you'll hear more from us. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Who can find a virtuous woman? For her worth is far above rubies. She seeks wool and flax, and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night, and provides food for her household. She girds herself with strength, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes tapestry for herself. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come.